Why do you feel like no matter how much you try, you're still invisible to the very people you want to notice you the most? You show up. You care. You try to be everything you were told a good man should be. Kind, patient, respectful. But instead of being wanted, you're overlooked. Passed by, left wondering what you're doing wrong. It doesn't make sense, does it? You've followed the rules. You've done everything right. And yet, the connection you crave remains out of reach. What if I told you the problem isn't you? It's what you were taught to believe. You were lied to about what women want. Society sold you a script that was never meant to serve you. They told you that if you're always available, if you always agree, if you put her happiness above your own, you'd win her heart. But in reality, that script makes you predictable, safe, boring, and the hard truth is, it kills attraction. Not because you're not good enough, but because that version of you isn't real. It's watered down, muted, trained to seek approval instead of embodying strength. Attraction doesn't respond to comfort, it responds to challenge. Women don't want a man who lives for their validation. They want a man who lives for something bigger than them. A man who doesn't need permission to be himself, who speaks with calm certainty, who respects himself so deeply that he never chases, he chooses. That kind of man doesn't try to fit into a woman's life. He builds a life that demands respect, and she naturally wants to be a part of it. But here's the twist. They'll never tell you this, not directly, because this version of you, it can't be manipulated. It doesn't beg. It doesn't fear rejection. It's powerful in silence, and that silence is terrifying to anyone who wants control. That's why they don't want you to find this truth. Because when you do, you stop being easy to influence. You stop pouring your energy into people who never earned it. You stop chasing and start leading. And the moment you lead, everything shifts. You walk differently. You speak less but say more. Your presence becomes louder than your words. You don't ask to be chosen. You make people realize what they'd lose if they let you go. That's what changes everything. Not lines, not tricks, not pretending to be something you're not. Just truth. Real, grounded, masculine truth. That's what women are drawn to, even if they don't admit it out loud. If you feel like you've been overlooked, pushed aside, or taken for granted, you're not alone, but you don't have to stay there. Because the version of you that's chasing, that's not the real you. The real you is still in there, untamed, unapologetic, and quietly powerful. And once you find him, the game isn't fair anymore. It's yours. Stay with this. The truth they've hidden is about to become your greatest weapon. Keep watching. You feel invisible because you've been taught to abandon your own power, not by accident, but by design. From the moment you were young, the world conditioned you to prioritize being liked over being respected, to keep your voice down, your edges soft, your presence small. You were told that if you made others comfortable, you'd be accepted. But that acceptance came with a price, the gradual erosion of your identity. And now you're here wondering why no one sees your worth. It's not because you're not valuable. It's because you've hidden your value behind a mask of pleasing and pretending. When you constantly give your time, attention, and energy without boundaries, you teach others to treat you like an option. You become predictable, always there, always eager. But attraction doesn't grow in certainty. It grows in polarity. Women are drawn to what they can't fully figure out, to energy that doesn't fold under pressure, to a man who doesn't flinch when she's cold, distant, or testing his patience. That emotional stability, that's what signals strength. And strength, not submission, is what commands attention. The more you seek validation, the more power you give away. Every unanswered text that leaves you anxious, every ignored call that makes you question your worth, it's not her fault. It's the version of you that's dependent on reaction instead of rooted in intention. Real confidence doesn't come from being chosen. It comes from knowing that your value doesn't fluctuate based on who stays or who leaves. It's in the stillness of not needing. That's where the real you lives. The moment you stop proving yourself is the moment people start noticing you. Because energy doesn't lie. You can fake smiles and charm, but your core state is what people feel. If your energy says, please pick me, you've already lost. But if your energy says, I know who I am, with or without you, everything changes. You're no longer trying to be enough. You're realizing you already are. You don't have to chase approval anymore. You don't have to shrink yourself to be accepted. You don't have to silence your truth to avoid rejection. You weren't born to be tolerated. You were born to be respected. But respect doesn't come from others first. It comes from you, from setting standards, from walking away when they're crossed, from understanding that your attention is a gift, not a currency to be exchanged for love. This is your turning point. The part of you that's tired, frustrated, and silently angry, that part isn't weakness, it's your power waking up. Don't run from it. Don't numb it. Let it guide you back to yourself. Because once you stop needing to be seen, they can't help but notice you. You become undeniable. And the man who becomes undeniable doesn't ask for attention. He commands it without saying a word. It was never about how you look. It was never about how much money you have or how perfect your life appears to be. The truth is simpler and deeper than that. Women don't feel drawn to a man because of what's on the surface. They feel pulled toward the energy he carries. Your energy speaks louder than your words ever could. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. Not what you wear, but how you wear it. Your energy tells people everything they need to know about how you see yourself and whether they should take you seriously. If you walk into a room trying to impress, you've already handed over your power. But if you walk in with quiet confidence like nothing needs to be said, people take notice without even knowing why. Because confidence is primal. It's not loud or arrogant. It's grounded, still, and certain. It doesn't beg for validation. It radiates self-trust. And that trust is magnetic. You could say nothing and still dominate the room. That's the kind of presence women feel in their bones, because it makes them feel something they rarely feel in today's world. Safe. Not safe in the way society defines it. Safe in the sense that they're in the presence of someone who knows who he is. A man who can hold his ground, who doesn't chase, doesn't fold, doesn't flinch. That safety is rooted in direction, discipline, and emotional control. It's not found in trying to be the nicest guy. It's found in being the realest version of yourself. Because the truth is, nothing is more attractive than authenticity backed by purpose. You don't need to look like anyone else. You don't need to copy confidence. You build it. Every time you keep your word, you build it. Every time you do something uncomfortable and follow through, you build it. Every time you stay calm when chaos hits, you build it. That energy, that slow-burning fire, it's what separates a man from a boy. And women feel that difference instantly. Most men are trying to be liked. Few are trying to be respected, but respect is what she craves, even if she doesn't know how to ask for it. Respect is earned through how you carry yourself, not how many compliments you give or how available you make yourself. When you start valuing your presence, others will too. When you stop trying to be chosen, they start trying to earn you. The goal isn't to impress her. The goal is to express your power without apology. To be a man who isn't afraid of silence. Who knows his worth isn't up for debate. That energy is rare, and the rare is always desired. You don't need to chase. You need to align. And once your energy shifts, everything around you will. She won't understand why she feels drawn to you. But she will. They all will. The reason you keep getting overlooked isn't because you're not enough. It's because you've been too available, too accessible, too easy to reach, too eager to respond, too willing to give your attention to anyone who asks for it. And what's easily given is rarely valued. You thought being present all the time would make you stand out, make you irreplaceable. But the truth is, overexposure kills desire. When you're always there, there's nothing left to wonder about. No space to miss you. No room to respect you. You gave everything before anyone earned anything. There's a reason people crave what's rare. Scarcity creates value. Distance builds tension. Mystery pulls attention. You've been operating in reverse. You've handed yourself away freely, hoping to be appreciated. But appreciation never comes from availability. It comes from discernment. When you become a man who doesn't rush to reply, who doesn't explain himself, who doesn't offer every part of himself to be consumed, you become a man of weight, a man who moves deliberately, and women feel that. They notice when a man has boundaries, when he has a life, when he doesn't revolve around their mood or schedule. That's when curiosity begins. If she always knows where you are, what you're thinking, how you feel, she's no longer drawn in, she's mentally clocked out. You've removed the unknown, and with it, the pull. Women chase the man they can't completely figure out, not because he plays games, but because his energy is sovereign. Because he's not afraid to let silence speak. Because he knows how to hold himself back, not as punishment, but as power. The goal is not to disappear. It's to become unavailable to everything that doesn't meet your standard. Stop explaining yourself to people who don't value your presence. Stop giving constant attention to women who haven't earned it. Stop treating your time like it's cheap. The more you pull back your energy, the more you regain control. And control isn't about manipulation. It's about ownership. Owning your time, your focus, your direction. owning the fact that you don't owe anyone access to you just because they want it. You are not a product on a shelf. You are not on sale. You are not someone to be casually tried on and discarded. You are a man with value, and value is never desperate. Value doesn't knock. It opens the door and lets others prove why they should stay. The moment you realize that being less available isn't rude, it's essential, everything shifts. The ones who took you for granted will feel the void. The ones who overlooked you will start to wonder, and the ones who truly see you will step up. This isn't about games. It's about alignment. Give your energy to those who elevate it. Withhold it from those who drain it. That shift alone separates the average man from the one who commands attention without saying a word. You weren't meant to be soft in the face of pressure. You weren't meant to shrink every time someone pushed against your boundaries. You were built to withstand, to hold your ground, to carry weight. And yet somewhere along the way, you were convinced that being agreeable was the key to being loved. That if you avoided conflict, kept your voice down, and stayed available, you'd finally be chosen. But you weren't made to be liked. You were made to be respected, and the two are not the same. Being liked means you adjust yourself to fit into other people's comfort zones. Being respected means you draw a line, and others learn where not to cross. Masculine energy is sharpened by resistance. It's not formed in the safety of constant approval. It's formed through friction, through trial, through the moments where you choose discipline over comfort. Every time you say no when it's easier to say yes, you build muscle. Every time you delay gratification, you strengthen your core. Every time you hold firm when someone tries to test your limits, you evolve. Strength isn't born from ease. It's born from pressure. And if you're always chasing comfort, you're also running from growth. She doesn't want the version of you that bends to everything. She's drawn to the version of you that won't, the version that has direction, that doesn't lose focus when tempted. A man who has mastered himself is rare, and rare always pulls attention. Not because he's flashy, not because he demands it, but because he moves with a presence that can't be shaken. That presence is what creates polarity. That tension between stability and intensity, that's what wakes up her deepest instincts. Not the words you say, not the favors you do, but the silent force you carry within you. If you fold at every sign of discomfort, if you can't hold emotional pressure, if you need approval to function, you'll never be fully seen. Not because you're not enough, but because you're not standing in your natural strength. She wants to feel your edge, your limits, your unwavering center. It's not about dominance, it's about solidity. When she pushes, will you wobble or will you stand? When she pulls away, will you chase or remain unmoved? Your response determines everything. The world doesn't reward comfort. It rewards those who walk through discomfort without breaking. Every test you face is a mirror. Every challenge is asking, who are you when things get hard? Do you run? Do you beg? Or do you rise? You rise by choice, by practice, by refusing to let pain define you. And in doing so, you build the kind of manhood that doesn't flinch, or the kind that doesn't have to speak to be felt. That's what women want to feel. That's what the world desperately needs more of. That's who you were meant to become. Don't apologize for it. Step into it fully. The most magnetic man in any room is the one who doesn't need anyone in it. Not because he's cold, not because he's detached from life, but because he's whole. A man who doesn't seek validation walks differently. His energy is grounded. He doesn't scan faces looking for approval. He doesn't contort himself to be accepted. He is already accepted by the one person who matters most, himself. That's the version of you that women feel before you ever say a word, because nothing is more attractive than emotional independence. You've been conditioned to believe that love is earned through sacrifice, that the more you do, the more you give, the more you'll be loved in return. But when you make someone else the center of your identity, you lose yourself in the process. And no one can respect a man who's abandoned himself. Respect starts when you stop living for their reaction and start living from your truth. You don't need her to like you. You need to like yourself when you look in the mirror. That's the foundation. And everything else is built on top of that. The second you stop needing is the second you start leading. Because neediness is energy that repels. It whispers insecurity. It signals that your value depends on someone else's presence. But a man who is complete on his own, he doesn't chase. He doesn't beg. He doesn't settle for breadcrumbs. He moves with calm certainty, knowing that connection must be mutual, earned, and never forced. When you carry yourself like this, you flip the dynamic entirely. You stop being the one asking for attention. You become the one who decides where your attention goes. She notices that. She feels it. She may not understand it logically, but her body knows when it's in the presence of a man who doesn't need her, but chooses her. And that distinction changes everything, because now you're not reaching from lack, you're moving from strength. Your silence becomes powerful, your absence becomes meaningful, your standards become undeniable. And suddenly, you're not one of many. You're the one that stands apart. If you're still wrapped up in needing her to choose you, stop. The deeper truth is you don't need her to complete you. You need to remember who you are. You need to build a life so fulfilling, so purpose-driven that no person can become your identity. The moment you detach from outcome is the moment you unlock your real power. You become free. And freedom is irresistible. There is no faster way to gain respect than to show that you're willing to walk away from anything that doesn't align, not as a tactic, but as a standard. When you don't fear loss, you become untouchable. And the man who can't be shaken is the man the world remembers. Be that man, not for her, for you. Because everything you want begins the moment you no longer need it. Your attention is power, and every time you give it without intention, you drain yourself. You think you're being kind. You think showing constant interest, replying instantly, always being available means you're doing the right thing. But what you're actually doing is teaching people to see your presence as a given, not a privilege. When your energy is freely available to anyone at any time, it loses weight. And without weight, there is no respect. Women notice how you invest your focus. They pay attention to how easily you give away your presence. If you're always ready to respond, always waiting, always chasing, they know you don't value yourself. They feel it. Your actions reveal your mindset. When your attention becomes cheap, so do you. But when you become selective, when you guard your energy, when you move with purpose, everything changes. Now your attention means something. Now it has depth. Now it leaves a mark. This isn't about withholding to manipulate. It's about honoring your time and knowing your worth. It's about understanding that what you focus on grows and what you tolerate multiplies. You weren't made to scatter your power across things that drain you. You were made to aim it with precision, like a blade, sharp, intentional, and unstoppable. Attention is currency, and a man who spends it wisely becomes rare. If she doesn't have to earn it, she won't value it. That's the uncomfortable truth. If your time is handed out for free, it will never be appreciated. But the moment you start treating your presence as sacred, people begin to adjust. The ones who only came for comfort fade away. The ones who only stayed because you were convenient disappear. And what's left is clarity. You begin to see who actually respects you, who actually shows up. And more importantly, you begin to respect yourself. Every time you answer a call out of guilt, you lose presence. Every time you engage in conversations that drain you, you lose power. Every time you give energy to someone who doesn't reciprocate, you're telling your soul that your boundaries don't matter. That ends now. From this moment on, your attention must be earned, your time must be protected, your energy must be directed, not dispersed. A man who masters his focus is dangerous. He builds empires, he commands silence, he inspires without speaking. And women are drawn to that because it's so rare, not because he tries to impress them, but because he impresses himself with what he's building. You don't need to chase. You need to align. You don't need to prove. You need to protect. The right people will feel the shift. They'll feel the weight in your silence, the clarity in your boundaries, the strength in your calm. That's how you stop being an option and start being the standard. Not by asking for it, but by becoming it, fully, unapologetically, completely. There comes a moment where you have to decide, will you keep trying to be liked, or will you finally demand to be respected? Because you can't have both. One is built on comfort, the other is built on consequence. Being liked means you make everyone else feel good, even when it costs you your dignity. Being respected means you're willing to be misunderstood, disliked, even judged, because you refuse to compromise your standard. That's what separates the man who gets used from the man who gets followed. Most people are afraid to draw lines, afraid to say no, afraid to stand firm when everything in them wants to be accepted. But here's the truth. No one tells you. Boundaries are not walls, they are doors. They tell the world how to treat you. They separate the weak energy from the strong. They repel those who only want it to take. And they attract those who value presence, depth, and principle. The moment you stop bending, you become immovable. And nothing commands attention like a man who refuses to break. You've been taught that softness is virtue, that compliance makes you kind, that silence makes you peaceful. But a man without edges gets disrespected, not loved, because people test limits. It's human nature, and if you don't define your edge, someone else will define it for you. You must decide what you allow, what you tolerate, what you'll never accept again. And once you decide, you don't explain, you don't justify, you don't apologize. You enforce. That is where power begins, not in loudness, but in unwavering clarity. When you stop fearing rejection, you unlock freedom. You no longer live for approval. You no longer give your energy to those who don't earn it. You begin to walk differently, talk differently, move differently. Not out of ego, but out of self-respect. And respect is the foundation of all real connection. Without it, love becomes manipulation. Without it, attraction becomes control. But when you lead with respect for yourself first, everything aligns. A man who commands respect doesn't chase anyone. He attracts by presence. He influences without effort. He builds trust by being consistent, grounded, and unshakable. And when he draws a line, it's felt, not out of threat, but out of certainty. Women respond to that. People respond to that, because they can feel when a man has become the mountain, not the wind. Still, strong, rooted. You don't need everyone to like you. You need to become undeniable to those who matter. And that begins by letting go of the need to be nice and choosing instead to be real. The world already has enough agreeable men. What it needs is men who are willing to hold the line, to speak truth, to protect their peace, to stand tall even if they stand alone. And when you become that man, respect is no longer something you seek. It's something you embody, relentlessly, consistently, without compromise. The moment you stop reacting is the moment you reclaim your power. Every time you take the bait, every emotional test, every sarcastic comment, every pull for attention, you lose ground. Because she's not looking to see how nice you are. She's looking to see if you bend. She's watching to see if you break character. If your confidence was real or just a mask that falls off under pressure, the test isn't the problem. It's the way you respond to it that defines everything. And until you master that response, you'll stay stuck in the same loop of confusion, frustration, and emotional burnout. She's not testing you because she wants to hurt you. She's testing to see if she can trust you. Can you hold yourself together when things feel off? Can you stay grounded when she's uncertain? Can you be the anchor when her emotions rise and fall? The test isn't personal, it's instinctual. It's not about logic, it's about security. It's about certainty. It's about knowing that you won't crumble the moment things stop going your way. Most men get emotional. They chase, they argue, they try to fix, explain, or prove. But none of that builds trust. What builds trust is consistency under pressure, stillness in chaos, calm when things get loud. Every time you fail the test, you teach her that you're unstable, that your power was performative, that your strength is conditional. And once she feels that weakness, the respect begins to dissolve. But when you pass the test, when you hold your ground without resentment, when you respond with clarity instead of defensiveness, you earn something no words could ever buy. You earn her deeper respect, her deeper attraction. Because you've shown her that you are exactly who you claim to be. Don't react. Observe. Stay present. Breathe. Ground yourself in what you know to be true. Her test is not a threat. It's an invitation to rise. It's a mirror. She's not asking you to be perfect. She's asking if your center is real, if your confidence survives uncertainty, if your masculinity holds steady when things feel unstable. And the answer isn't found in what you say. It's revealed in what you embody. The man who can't be moved is rare. He doesn't argue for his worth. He doesn't explain his standards. He doesn't defend his position to be liked. He simply exists in truth, fully, unapologetically. When she tests him, he doesn't flinch. When she pulls back, he doesn't chase. When she pushes, he doesn't collapse. He stands. And in that stillness, he becomes undeniable. Because now, she knows. She's not dealing with a boy who needs reassurance. She's facing a man who doesn't waver. Let them test. Let them wonder. Let them try to provoke. You stay unmoved. Because when you can't be shaken, you become the storm. And the man who becomes the storm is the man who changes everything. The man who rises above the need to be understood becomes unstoppable. Because most men are trapped in a loop of needing to explain, justify, or convince others of their worth. They spill their energy trying to be seen, trying to be validated, trying to make someone finally get it. But the need to be understood is a weakness disguised as vulnerability. It's a subtle cry for approval. And when you chase understanding, you give away your center. You allow someone else's opinion to dictate your sense of self. That is the root of emotional exhaustion, basing your power on their perception. You don't owe anyone clarity about who you are. Your truth does not require translation. Your worth is not on trial. You don't need to argue for your value. The real ones will feel it. The shallow ones will question it. And both responses are a reflection of them, not of you. Stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Start building a life so sharp, so clear, so disciplined that your presence speaks louder than your defense ever could. Silence is often the loudest answer. Not because it's cold, but because it's unshakable. A man who can sit in silence and still feel powerful has nothing to prove. That is magnetic. That is rare. Most men fear silence because they fear rejection. But rejection only wounds the man who doubts himself. When you know who you are, rejection becomes information, not identity. It tells you what isn't aligned, not what you lack. You move on, you elevate, you detach without bitterness. That emotional detachment is not apathy, it's strength. It means your emotions are not slaves to outcomes. You must become immune to emotional bait, the sarcasm, the sudden coldness, the dramatic pullbacks, the games. They're not there to hurt you. They're there to expose whether or not you've mastered yourself. Every time you overreact, over-explain, or over-pursue, you fail the internal test. But when you remain still, measured and grounded, you pass silently. And that silence is deafening. It shifts the power. It signals maturity. It communicates that you don't dance for validation. You walk with purpose. When you stop chasing clarity from others, you start creating clarity within. You no longer waste time trying to be decoded. You become focused on becoming undeniable through your habits, through your presence, through your restraint. The man who leads doesn't beg to be heard. He is heard without effort. His actions echo longer than words ever could. And women don't just hear that, they feel it deeply. You are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to become so solid within yourself that understanding becomes irrelevant. The less you need to be understood, the more powerful you become. Because then your energy is no longer tied to reaction. It's tied to purpose. It's tied to direction. And that direction becomes unshakable. That is how you rise, silently, steadily, fully. Most men think power is something you project, a look, a tone, a certain posture. But real power isn't something you show, it's something you hold quietly, without needing anyone to notice. It's the restraint not to respond, the discipline not to react, the ability to sit in discomfort without reaching for attention. That kind of power doesn't shout, it doesn't chase, it doesn't need to convince. It simply is. And that's why it moves people without force. That's why it captivates without trying. When you build internal power, your presence shifts. You stop needing situations to go your way. You stop needing people to approve. You stop needing everything to be explained. You become comfortable with uncertainty, grounded in chaos, focused in distraction. The world around you might shake, but you don't. You remain, you observe, you choose. That's what makes you different. Not because you try to be, but because you've developed the strength to no longer need to try. The average man is emotionally loud. He reacts to every trigger. He explains every decision. He validates every move. But the masculine man is emotionally still. His peace is not something borrowed from others. It's something built within. And that stillness is what makes him deeply attractive, not just to women, but to life itself. Because when you no longer seek peace, but embody it, everything starts moving in your favor. People lean in, situations open up, not because you push, but because you've become the kind of man who doesn't need to. Restraint is power, not because it's passive, but because it's precise. You don't respond to every message. You don't engage every argument. You don't chase after what disrespects you. You choose your energy like a weapon, sharpened, not scattered. This is what creates mystery. This is what builds presence. The more intentional you are with your attention, the more your energy carries weight. And women feel that instantly. They don't feel pressure. They feel gravity. They feel your control, not over them, but over yourself. You don't need to say much when your actions speak with discipline. You don't need to dominate when your silence holds authority. You don't need to be loud when your focus makes noise. You simply need to be unmoved, and that is rare. That is unforgettable. Because most people are constantly searching for control. But you You've become control, not by overpowering, but by mastering restraint, mastering presence, mastering yourself. This isn't about being cold. This is about being clear. The clearer you are within, the less noise you need to make without. You don't need to convince anyone to value you. You need to become the man whose energy demands it, quietly, consistently, completely. Let others chase chaos. You remain calm. Let others seek approval. You remain whole. Let others be desperate to be seen. You become the one who is felt before a single word is spoken. A man who leads his life from internal standards will always rise above the man who lives by external reaction. Because when your values are firm, you no longer shift with the wind. You don't wake up trying to be who they want. You wake up determined to be who you're meant to be. And that difference changes everything. Women aren't drawn to the man who adapts himself for approval. They're pulled toward the man who is unshakably rooted in his own truth, the one who sets the tone, who decides the pace, who brings structure where others bring chaos. She doesn't crave your perfection. She wants to feel your direction. She doesn't need you to have all the answers. She needs to know you aren't lost. And when you live by your own code, that certainty shows. It's not in what you say. It's in how you move. It's in your ability to say no without guilt, to walk away without hesitation, to speak without seeking agreement. That level of clarity makes you powerful, not because of who sees you, but because of who you no longer need to see you. Most men are desperate to be chosen, but a man of depth knows that being chosen means nothing if it requires you to abandon yourself. So he stops playing the game. He stops performing. He stops trying to prove, and instead he begins to build. He builds discipline. He builds vision. He builds structure. And through that structure, he creates a life that commands respect without demanding attention. That life becomes the filter. The unworthy won't step in. The ones who belong will rise to match it. Power is found in consistency. Anyone can look confident for a day. Anyone can act grounded for a week. But when life gets uncomfortable, who are you? When you're tired, tempted, tested, do you fold or do you follow your standard? Because the world is watching, and more importantly, you are watching. Every time you break your word to yourself, you lose trust in your own leadership. Every time you hold the line, that trust deepens, and that trust is what forms unshakable masculinity. Women feel that. They may not say it, but they sense it. When you keep your word, when you move with purpose, when you make decisions without second guessing, it calms their nervous system. It tells them you're not just emotionally strong, you're structurally solid. That solidity is what creates desire, not just momentary attraction, but deep, lasting pull. Because when you become the man who leads himself, you naturally become the man others want to follow. You don't have to explain your values, you just have to live them. You don't have to force alignment. You just have to stand so firmly in your truth that anything misaligned falls away. That's not ego, that's leadership. And when you lead yourself like that, the world moves around you, not the other way around. A man becomes truly dangerous the moment he no longer needs validation to act. When his decisions are no longer influenced by the reactions of others, he unlocks a level of freedom most people will never taste. He no longer hesitates to speak his truth. He no longer waits for permission. He no longer waters down his intensity just to fit into someone else's comfort zone. That kind of man cannot be manipulated. He cannot be guilted into submission or seduced into silence. His life is driven by principle, not pressure. That's what creates gravity. When you stop living for applause and start living for alignment, you stand out without even trying. The average man molds himself to be liked. The powerful man molds himself to become sharp. And in doing so, he becomes rare. Most people are used to being able to sway others with opinion, emotion, or shame. But when you face a man who has faced himself, those tactics fall flat. You can't shake a man who has already done the internal work. You can't shame a man who doesn't seek approval. You can't control a man who leads himself. The reason you feel off, tired, or confused is because you keep betraying yourself to be accepted. Every time you agree when you don't mean it, say yes when you want to say no, entertain someone who disrespects you, you disconnect from your power, and that disconnection is what makes you invisible. Not because you lack value, but because you've buried it under performance. You were not built to perform. You were built to command, to lead, to stand. But you can't lead others if you can't first lead yourself. The world is starving for men with conviction. Men who won't fold just because it's easier to agree. Men who won't sacrifice truth to avoid tension. Men who won't betray their mission just to be accepted by the wrong people. That's the kind of masculinity that breaks patterns, builds legacies, and shifts rooms. Not because it demands control, but because it radiates it. That level of presence doesn't come from what you own. It comes from what you refuse to compromise. If you want to be respected, stop explaining yourself. Stop giving people discounts on your energy. Stop seeking comfort in the arms of those who haven't earned your vulnerability. Learn to sit with your own thoughts. Learn to validate your own decisions. Learn to be okay with being misunderstood, even disliked, if it means you're being honest. That honesty will set you apart more than charm ever could. You are not here to be everyone's favorite. You are here to become unshakably yourself. And once you reach that level of self-respect, the opinions of others start to fade into background noise. Not because they don't matter, but because they no longer control you. That's power. That's presence. And that's who you're meant to become. The fastest way to lose your power is to negotiate with your own standards. The moment you start making exceptions, the moment you start bending your rules to please others, you begin to chip away at your identity. And the truth is, every time you compromise what you know is right just to avoid conflict or keep someone around, you are quietly teaching yourself that your values can be bought, that your voice can be softened, that your boundaries are flexible under pressure. That is how strength decays, not in an explosion, but in small, silent moments of self-abandonment. A man with standards is dangerous because he doesn't need the world to like him. He just needs to like the man he's becoming. He doesn't act based on fear of rejection. He acts based on alignment. And that alignment builds discipline. Because when your actions reflect your values, you become internally bulletproof. There's no more second guessing, no more chasing, no more tolerating what drains your soul. You act with clarity. You move with weight. You exist with purpose. Most men lose themselves not because they lack strength, but because they've never enforced their standards. They say they want respect, but they tolerate disrespect. They say they want honesty, but they accept games. They say they want peace, but they chase drama. You cannot rise while living in contradiction. Your habits must match your words. Your boundaries must reflect your worth. If you're not consistent, you're not credible. And if you're not credible, you won't be respected by anyone, including yourself. Respect starts with non-negotiables, the things you will never accept, no matter how attractive, convenient, or comfortable something looks. You don't explain them. You don't apologize for them. You live them. Because those lines are not there to push others away. They're there to protect what you're building. You're not hard to love. You're hard to manipulate. And anyone who sees your standards as a threat is not meant to stand beside you. The more you enforce your standards, the more you'll lose people who were never aligned. Let them go. The man who tries to keep everyone will eventually lose himself. You weren't built to be adjustable. You were built to be solid, not rigid, not cold, but clear. A clear man is rare. A clear man is feared. Because a clear man can't be swayed by pressure, seduced by attention, or controlled by emotion. He listens, he feels, but he moves by principle. You are not just building a life. You are becoming the foundation of it. And if your foundation is weak, everything you build will eventually collapse. But when your values are non-negotiable, your presence becomes undeniable, not because of what you say, but because of what you refuse to compromise. That is where real power begins. Not in dominance, not in status, in integrity. And when integrity becomes your standard, everything that isn't real falls away. Let it. That's how you rise. You were not born to be passive. You were not built to wait, to hope, to sit quietly while your potential rots beneath indecision. Passivity is a slow death. Every time you hesitate, every time you postpone, every time you tell yourself maybe later, you're choosing comfort over transformation. And that comfort is the silent killer of every man who once dreamed of more. You think you're playing it safe, but what you're really doing is hiding. Hiding from your own greatness. Hiding from the pain that comes with real change. Hiding from the version of yourself that terrifies you, not because he's weak, but because he's powerful beyond what you've allowed yourself to become. Every man reaches a breaking point, a moment where being numb is no longer tolerable, where avoiding growth becomes more painful than chasing it, where you finally realize that nothing changes until you do. That moment is when everything begins, not with motivation, not with comfort, but with a decision, a clean, sharp decision to step into discomfort, to do what's hard, to do what's boring, to do what others refuse to do, because discipline isn't glamorous, it's brutal, it's repetitive, it's lonely, but it builds a man who commands respect without asking for it. Most will never reach that level because most want shortcuts. They want results without process, praise without pain, victory without sacrifice. But what you're building isn't a trick or a tactic, it's a foundation. One forged in the fire of routine, challenge, and self-respect. Every early morning, every lonely workout, every time you say no to temporary pleasure, you are declaring who you are, not just to the world, but to yourself. That identity compounds. And one day you'll wake up as someone you used to admire, not because of luck, because you refuse to fold. Women feel this on a deep level. They may not articulate it, but they recognize a man who is in motion, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. A man who refuses to be stagnant becomes attractive in a way that no words can replicate. Because forward motion is rare. Most men are stuck, frozen in their own doubt, buried under distractions, excuses, and fake confidence. But the man who moves through it anyway, that's the man who separates himself from the noise. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be consistent. You don't need to have all the answers. You need to show up every single day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. That's what makes you powerful. Not your image, your habits, not your words, your actions. That's what creates respect. That's what makes women stop and look twice. Not your appearance, your presence. And presence is built in silence, in the grind, in the moments no one sees. Don't wait to feel ready. Choose to become ready, not tomorrow, now. Because this moment will never come again, and neither will the man you're meant to become. If you want to change how the world responds to you, change how you carry yourself when no one is watching. That's where power is built, in silence, in solitude, in the discipline no one applauds. Because true confidence isn't loud, and it doesn't beg for recognition, it's earned quietly. Through the decisions you make when it's just you, your thoughts, and the temptation to quit. Most men collapse in those moments. They delay, they scroll, they wait. But the man who looks that resistance in the eye and acts anyway, he becomes unstoppable. You don't need more time. You don't need another strategy. What you need is commitment. Ruthless, unshakable commitment to becoming the man you were designed to be. That means showing up when it's inconvenient. That means saying no when your impulses scream yes. That means doing what's necessary even when it's boring, even when it's hard, even when it's thankless. Because results don't care about how you feel. Life doesn't reward potential. It rewards execution. And if you're not willing to pay the price in private, you'll never hold the prize in public. Every day, you're broadcasting your worth to the world through your behavior, not through your words, not through your intentions, through your actions, through what you tolerate, through what you pursue, through how you move, how you speak, how you show up. Women feel this. They sense the difference between a man who is grounded in purpose and one who is just faking presence. They're not looking for the loudest guy in the room. They're watching for the one who moves with certainty, who doesn't explain himself, who doesn't flinch when things get uncomfortable. The truth is, no one is coming to save you. No one is going to hand you the life you want. And if you keep waiting for motivation, you'll stay exactly where you are. Motivation fades, discipline sustains. And discipline is born the moment you stop asking for ease and start demanding excellence from yourself. You train your mind to push. You train your body to act. You train your spirit to lead. Because the man who trains himself in private becomes the man who is respected in every room he walks into. You don't rise by accident, you rise by choice. Thousands of them, one after another. Every small decision, every moment of resistance overcome, compounds. You become powerful not overnight, but inch by inch, choice by choice, rep by rep. And eventually you wake up and realize you've become someone unrecognizable. Not because the world finally saw your worth, but because you finally decided to live like it. The life you want isn't waiting for you. It's locked behind the version of you you've been avoiding, and no one can break that door down for you. It's your mind, your standard, your mission. Choose it fully, own it completely, show the world what it means to move with purpose, and never let up. Most men never realize how much of their potential is being drained by what they choose to tolerate. Weak conversations, Meaningless distractions, shallow connections, scrolling through moments instead of building a future. And with every small compromise, they lose strength, not all at once, but slowly, quietly, a dull erosion of power that feels normal because everyone else is doing the same. But if you keep living like everyone else, you will die like everyone else, regretful, confused, and full of what-ifs. That is not the life you were built for. You were meant to move with intensity. You were meant to feel the fire of purpose burning through your actions. But that fire dies in environments that reward mediocrity. If you want to evolve, you must become a man who ruthlessly filters what gets access to his time, his mind, his energy. You don't entertain chaos. You don't respond to every voice. You don't stay in rooms that insult your values. You walk. Not because you're arrogant, but because you're awake. Because your attention is currency. Because your future is too valuable to waste on the cheap comforts of now. The reason you feel stuck is because you keep feeding your weaknesses. You keep saying yes to things that drain you. You keep hoping the wrong habits will somehow lead to the right outcome. But you can't outwork what you refuse to let go of. You can't rise with anchors tied to your feet. If you want to elevate, you must eliminate. Ruthlessly, consistently, without apology. The version of you that's waiting on the other side of change is not more talented. He's just more disciplined, more focused, more aligned with what actually matters. Every high-value man you admire didn't get there by adding more. He got there by subtracting, by cutting away the things that dilute his strength, by saying no to temporary pleasure in order to build permanent purpose. That's the shift that transforms a man. Not more noise, but more clarity. Not more input, but more intention. And clarity begins the moment you stop asking what feels good and start asking what builds you. You do not need more time. You need fewer distractions. You need cleaner energy, sharper direction. You need to look at your life with brutal honesty and remove anything that doesn't support your evolution. Not tomorrow, not next month, now. Because every moment spent tolerating weakness is a moment stolen from greatness. And no one will give that back to you. You have to take it with discipline, with focus, with absolute commitment. Your life is your responsibility. And that means protecting your energy like your future depends on it, because it does. You don't rise by doing more. You rise by doing less, better, with intensity, with purpose, with no room for the meaningless. That is how you become undeniable, not louder but cleaner, not busier but sharper, not softer but stronger. Let go of what weakens you, or be ruled by it forever. The choice is yours. There comes a moment when you must stop asking who you need to become and start acting like him, not thinking, not hoping, acting. Because at some point the delay becomes disrespectful. Every excuse is a rejection of the man you're capable of being. Every hesitation is a step away from power. And while the world distracts you with comfort, dopamine, and artificial validation, the clock keeps ticking. Time doesn't wait for clarity. It rewards action. Quiet, disciplined, unapologetic action. The kind that's invisible at first, but builds a storm underneath the surface. The kind that no one claps for, but that eventually makes the world pay attention. You don't need another reason. You already know what you're avoiding. You already know what's draining you. You already know what you've been tolerating. The network error occurred. Please check your connection and try again. If this issue persists, please contact us through our help center at help. OpenAI. Come.